Thank you for downloading this podcast. You're about to explore the temporal ideas of world-leading experts in considering the question, is it possible to manage time? In this wide-ranging exploration of time management, we examine all sorts of time behaviours, such as procrastination, goal setting, time norms, Bali's rubber time, taking activity breaks, time ordering in autism, social time and time autonomy, to name just a few. Jayne Hamilton's Ph.D. looks at time management and time perspectives of autistic adolescents and young adults. She discusses how autistic people do have strong concepts of time. Their future goals are identical to their non-autistic peers. It's the ordering of tasks in time that's the issue. Wendelin van Erde, Associate Professor of Amsterdam's Business School, asserts that we all try to get control over time. She sees that we all need to be able to structure our activity to work with others, although different organisations have different time norms. Time management should be about what we produce, not the amount of time spent. Anna Sakova, independent researcher, visual artist, event organiser, creative thinker and doer, questions whether we need to manage our time. How we live it and share it is crucial. If you're managing your time, then you're just managing your time. Anna points out we don't have a break culture, yet taking breaks improves well-being and leads to solving problems more creatively. We are living organisms, and we must take care of ourselves. Philip Zimbardo is the grandfather of time perspective. Interestingly, he tells us that he finds time a challenge. I don't think I've ever managed time. Instead, he manages activities. It turns out that Philip gets his tasks done, but at a personal cost. Please like, comment and share this lively podcast to help listeners to come to their own conclusions in considering, is it possible to manage time? I'm here with Jayne Hamilton from Queen's University, Belfast. Jayne has 6 weeks of her PhD left to complete, where she's looking at time within autistic adolescents and young adults. I actually put that she was a doctor already in the, if you notice here, I've already given her the qualification. Now, Dr. Wendelin van Erde, thank you, Associate Professor of University van Amsterdam, I've put a van in there, Business School, researching work and organisational psychology. Dr. Anna Sakova, independent researcher, visual artist, event organiser, creative thinker and doer, Copenhagen, Denmark. And of course, somebody you might not know, Dr. Philip G. Zimbardo, Professor Emeritus, Stanford University, the grandfather of time perspective worldwide, and so much more. Together with our highly knowledgeable and experienced audience, that's you guys, we will attempt to answer with our viewers this question: is it possible to manage time? So, if you don't mind, I will seek the audience insights a little later on. So first of all then, Phil.
No, let's go there.
Is it possible?
I would rather start that way.
Phil would rather start that way, so he's already managing
Beauty before age.
time.
Yeah.
Beauty before age. Well,
Thank you.
I'm in the middle. So, Jayne.
Yes.
Is it possible to manage time?
Well, okay, so obviously this morning I did a presentation on a time management
You
scale.
did.
Absolute shameless plug. So to a certain extent you expect me to say yes, it is simply possible to manage time. But I'm not that simple and straightforward. So I think it depends what aspect you mean and what angle you're taking from it. So while we sit here and you talk of how time is passing and you're trying to catch up with time, that system of time, as in 60 minutes, 60 seconds, hours, days, weeks, months, years, that's going to cycle no matter what, and we can't change that. But if I tell you that you have a set amount of time to do something, then you have skills like goal setting and prioritization to help make our time more efficient.
Very good. Okay, well, before I comment on that, Wendy.
Yeah, I would like to add to that. I agree with most of it, but I would say it in a bit of a different way.
Okay,
I
good.
think we manage our activities over time. So in a way we shorten that expression, saying we manage time. We try to get a sense of control of our activities over time.
Okay, any examples?
Well, goal setting, planning, prioritization, monitoring of our actions, evaluating, adapting.
Okay, and how would you say we were doing with the conference in terms of our time management so far?
Well, I think that's a bit different because there could be time norms. So what is the norm for this particular conference? And as I remember in the beginning, is that there's some history.
There is.
And some things have grown to be in a certain way. There's some delays, and that's apparently become the norm that's been accepted.
Right, so there's a time norm. Good. That's good. I think we're doing very well this year. Anna, is it possible to manage time?
It is, if you need it.
It's optional?
I think so.
What's the other option?
To let it go.
And then what? If you're not managing time, what are you doing?
You're living your life.
So hold on. So if you're not managing time, you're living your life. But if you are managing your time, you're what?
Managing your time.
Okay. All right. Well, Phil, what have you got to add to this?
So for me, it's managing activities. So when I was a fairly young professor at Stanford, in order to move ahead, I had to do research. But I love to do research. Research takes time, meeting with your graduate research team, your undergraduate research team. And then you did the research, and then of course you had to write it up, you had to write articles about it. At the same time, I was writing introductory psychology textbooks, which I love to do, which take an enormous amount of time. There are 18 chapters. Each chapter covers a different topic of psychology. So you have to find out what is new since the last edition. And you probably have to write, 4 or 5 hours a day or night in the textbook to get it finished. Because when you start, they give you a deadline. You have like 12 months or 16 months to finish. So that was there. And then, of course, I love my children, and they take time. And I love my wife, and she takes time. And so essentially, when I put together all the things I would have to do virtually each day, and then, of course, I got invited to give lectures in Poland, in Czechoslovakia, in Australia, in New Zealand, etc. And each of those places take time to get there. And when I'm there, I have to be there fully for the people there, the students, the faculty. So I have to devote my total time and attention to them. So when you put it all together, there was not enough time left for personal time, other than brushing your teeth and I think a mouthwash. But other than that, so in all of this, there were these lists I would have to-do lists, and it would run off the computer screen, and I have to keep updating it. All right. So for me, time has always been a challenge that I don't think, I did a lot of time-based things, and I don't have a sense I ever managed it. I have a sense time managed me.
Okay, that's interesting because you're prolific in terms of your work. You've got so much energy, you've got so many projects going, and it's global. It's not like it's all happening around your street where you live, and yet you're not really managing time.
No, it manages me. Yeah. I mean, I get it done, but it's at a cost.
Yeah,
Like I don't sleep.
you don't sleep, so you could be tweeting with President. Okay, so we surely the history of time is sort of happened around the Industrial Revolution, where we started to need to get the masses out of the countryside and into the cities, into urban settings, into factories, being productive and effective. I mean, this is where we started really concentrating on managing time. Now, technologically, we can have robots. We don't need people, because people are just inefficient and ineffective. We try our best. We beat them. We sack them. We tell them something wrong with them, so we get counsellors and therapists in to try and fix that individual who's not fitting in with the organisational time culture. You know, so we've got this sort of made-up thing of 60 minutes, 60 seconds, 12 months and a year. I mean, you know what? It definitely is not Tuesday today. It's completely made up. But we use it as an organising tool in some way, or we try to. Yeah? But is it? I don't really feel like you feel. I don't really feel that I'm actually managing time, and it's more like I'm managing life. And, you know, never mind the objective things that we need to do, there's subjective stuff, like I just don't feel like finishing that book. Going on, or other distractions. So, you know, would it be better if we were finding another way to talk about how we manage time? Gwendolyn.
Well, I strongly believe that we need the structure.
Ah, brilliant.
I think it's a very good tool to synchronize our activities. If we couldn't talk about this,
Yeah.
we couldn't do things together.
True.
And so you would have your rhythm perhaps, and
Yeah.
you would have your rhythm, and you would want to accomplish things. But how do you then connect?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think we need this time structure and appointments about them
Yeah.
to work together.
Okay. I mean, that's what you do. Your research and your work is within the workplace, isn't it?
Right.
So have you seen any good practices within the workplace in terms of thinking about that time management structure or organising tool?
Yeah, I think it can be used in a bad way and in a good way. And in a good way, I think if you get the cooperation as the focal point and to decide on what things you want to do together,
Yeah.
and move things forward together, I think that this structure is very helpful.
Yeah. And also, when I worked in Holland, in Amsterdam, I worked in a design bureau, several design bureaus, but we had this thing where we didn't come in till 12 o'clock on a Monday, and we left at 12 o'clock on a Friday, so we had a 3-day weekend. I think that was fairly normal in Holland.
Yeah, we are, in most companies, we are very flexible.
Yeah.
So where that is possible,
Yeah.
then we try to accommodate and see if that can work. So then you have different appointments about what you actually produce, rather than how much time you spend at work.
Right, that's an important distinction, isn't it?
Because then you have more flexibility in how you want to.
It's about that, in a way, it's about the individual, the team, and how they work in relation to time, rather than the clock.
But you still need the clock.
Okay, well, we've already got it, so I think we'll go with it. It's been around for a long time. Jayne, go on.
Yeah, but So when I was reciting my activities, I said, here's all the work-related activities, here's the family. What I left out was social time.
Oh, yes.
So social time is what suffers. In all these organizations now, there's no time to socialize. There's no time to make friends. What was that book, Bowling Alone? Most companies used to have bowling teams, or you'd meet after work and you'd have teams that go bowling alleys and things, and that's all gone. I mean, work is a place you go to create a product, whatever that product is. That's the job. And then when you go home, sometimes depending on the kind of job you take to work home. If you're an academic, you read journal articles, read books, you write when you're home. Or some people spend a lot of time watching sports or TV or stuff. But very few of us now have really social time where we invite friends to your home. Or you go with friends, in quote, academics don't go to a bar, or maybe in France to a cafe. So I think that's what's really suffering and that's what's dropped out of most people's agenda, is making time, social time, time to maintain friendships, time to make a new friend. So the sad thing is, and there's a lot of research that shows that among men, if you don't make friends in college, in high school, college, or the military, you're unlikely to make a new friend for the rest of your life. There's a lot of solid research on that. It's just, you don't have time to make a new friend. You don't have time to maintain a friendship, which is really sad.
Oh, okay, so
Now, I know it might be different among women.
But I think that your point really is that if we try and come from a time management perspective, then we're going to prioritise those social pressure things like work and achievement, doing, rather than being, which could lead to ill health or loneliness.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I would like to go against
Good,
that.
great.
It's not time management itself that would tell you to prioritize in that way.
Yeah.
So if you make different decisions and saying that my priority is making friends, then logically that would follow from your time management.
Okay, so it's a neutral thing.
All I'm saying is it can be used in a good way and in a bad way.
Yeah. So is it that the employers might, in some way, dominate the person's choice?
Well, I mean, I don't think of the new tech industries in Silicon Valley. I mean, it's just, they give you free food, they give you, free gymnasium, free dry cleaner. They really don't want you to physically leave the place. When you leave, you get on their bus and drive to your apartment, and the bus takes you back. So in a funny way, you never leave work.
Yeah.
So work is always there or here, and I think that's what they want. And so, but as far as I know, there's not collegial activities. They're not like, we're all going to go to a baseball game, we're all going to go to a tennis match, or we're all going to go do bowling or something of this kind. I don't know enough about it. Maybe some companies do. I think it's not part of the job description, expecting you to have as your friends other workers who are simply colleagues. And I think this is true again in many academic departments. You have colleagues, but very few of them are friends. In fact, I asked you, think of the last time you invited a colleague for dinner, or last time a colleague invited you. I know at Stanford it was relatively rare, relatively unusual.
Important issues, but do you take Wendland's general point, which is time management's just a neutral thing. It's what you do with it. Is that your point? Thank you. Just checking. I don't want to start making stuff up.
But what he said, it's all about priorities.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, you set priorities and then you work time under each priority.
Yeah. Okay. What about creative people, Anna? Are they different? Do they relate to time management or the idea of managing time differently in your experience?
I don't work that much with creative people.
But you are creative.
Yes, yes.
Perhaps you just talk about yourself then.
But it is, there is like different notions of time. But I mean, what I can talk a little bit what I do in my creative time studio.
Yeah, please do.
That's I work sometimes with people who are working in a normal office type of job, and they're actually interested in how to become even more effective or efficient in their workplace. And then the first question I ask is actually, how often do you take breaks? And that's a very, I think, important question, because us as human species, we can actually maybe like have a concentrated work for maximum of 2 hours. And that's, you really need to have a break afterwards. And depending, of course, on the type of job, type of activity you're doing. So sometimes it can be even shorter or a little bit longer, it depends. And then, of course, the personality differences, individual differences take place as well. But that is very important, and that's what I'm kind of like always trying to make forward, that actually if you want to become more efficient or you want to become more productive, you actually need to take a break and zoom out.
Yeah.
Like to make a step back, and then you continue. And the more we don't really have a very efficient break culture anymore, because what we do, so if we are working with the computer, then we would take a break and take I don't know, check what's happening on social media, which is basically exactly the same activity. Right. So if you want to have an efficient break, you need to do something completely different. So if you're sitting, you go for a walk. So if you're doing something on computer, you do something non-digital. If you're doing something non-digital, then okay, you do something on the computer. So something that completely different activity for what you're doing, because that can actually refresh you and come back, and then you are kind of maybe get some new ideas actually on the task that you were working on. And another activity what I'm doing mostly is actually to help people to realize where is their like creativity lives, and I take creativity in a very broad perspective. So it's not something you need to make some creative art or whatever, because we can be creative in many different ways. It's just creative how we resolve different tasks or solve a particular problem, so it doesn't have to be creating art piece. So that's we go on different journeys with those people, and I'm trying to create those conditions for them that they can realize where their potential is. And then they when they realize that, then it's very easy for them to actually manage their time or create an agenda for them that actually answers to their needs and their priorities. And that's it's a living organism. It changes all the time. So sometimes it's one thing, but then if you revisit this in like in 1 month or in 3 months or in 3 years, it can be totally different, and it's fine, because you are a living organism. You change all the time, and priorities change. So sometimes your priority would be playing the piano, another priority time it will be doing something else, making some things out of clay. I don't know. It changes.
I needed you as my consultant, because
gladly to help.
It's expensive.
When I was typing, it's worth it. When I was typing all those books, I would type until my hands were numb, and that would be the time you take a break. And then you'd have a break for dinner or a break to make love to my wife. But I had 3 carpal tunnel surgeries, meaning there's a point at which my hands were like this, and in order to keep doing it, you have to have a surgery so you can move your hand again. And my hand is still like permanently numb even after that, which now, in retrospect, was not worth it.
Right. Yeah. So that's the.
I could have written 59 books rather than 60.
Oh, fair enough. But there's a lack of me time as well. You're not taking yourself into account.
Oh no. It's just, this is. I mean, it's a here and here, and there's no hearts, brain and fingers. Just.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to advocate. I mean, that first of all is just to take care of yourself, take care of your creative self, in whatever way your creative self is. Because if you don't really cater for your own creativity, then I mean, it's not worth it. Exactly. And it's I always give this example of when we are flying in the airplane, and they give this announcement about the oxygen mask. So you help yourself first before helping others. take care of yourself first, because if you will burn out, then it doesn't really matter what will happen afterwards. You really need to have this me time and actually, yeah.
So I would like to add, it's not just only about creative tasks.
Yeah, no.
It's really a recovery.
Yes.
So if you feel very stressed, then
Yeah.
all the research shows that there needs to be some interval for recovery.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. But I think it's about being aware. I mean, I think the idea is that time management, if you sort of take your day, take your schedule and map out what you're going to do or something, that's a type of low-level awareness. But what I think what we're talking about is a much greater sense of who you are in relation to the environment. Because, of course, where you're working could be the environment is a dangerous place or hazardous place, or is causing you to be less productive. But there's other aspects as well, because we're almost talking as if we're, I don't know, something like we're normal. So what about, how does somebody who's autistic, how do they relate to time and how would they manage it?
With difficulty. So a big part of my PhD has been looking at autism, both in adolescents and young adults, and part of that scale that I mentioned there. We looked at it, so we tried to split a lot of the time tasks, including your task obviously, into short range, long range, and combination of both short and long. And what we found each time was that the time management scale was positively related with the future aspect of your scale. So what we realised there was obviously the better you could manage your time, the more future orientated you were, which makes a lot of sense in a typical sample, but then we actually replicated that in an autistic sample 4 times over, so in 2 adolescent samples and 2 young adult samples. And what that kind of indicates is that time to an autistic person is not what we are probably saying it is at the moment.
Right.
And so one of the tasks that I got the participants to do was I gave them this, it was a fake calendar. So I just made up a monthly calendar with a lot of obligations in it, so things like school, hockey practice, their grandmother's birthday, and then they had to fill in around those 5 different activities, things like revising 15 hours for a class test that was coming up, competing for a hockey tournament, they had to do 10 hours additional practice for their fitness. And obviously the aim was that they would do maybe 1 hour today, half an hour tomorrow, but what I found was that the shortest session that any participant put in was 3.5 hours. And the longest session then was 15.5 hours.
Wow.
With no breaks.
Whoa.
And that it didn't matter whether they were adolescent or young adult. So it fits perfectly with what you're saying. There's just that complete lack of awareness. And in the autistic sample that makes sense because once they get engrossed into something they obviously lose track of time as we're referring to it at the moment.
Yeah.
But it's completely unrealistic obviously to even do the 3.5 hour session, let alone the longer session.
Yeah. So they just have a different concept of time, or no concept of time?
I think they do have a concept of time. I think, so another task that I had done was the future milestone task. So when I asked the participants what they want to do in 1 to 5, 10, 15 years, their plans were identical to their peers. So they still wanted to be, the adolescents, they still wanted their GCSEs, they still wanted to be married or living with their partner, they wanted to have their first child on the way, and they wanted to be approaching at least that managerial position, and that was identical to their control peers.
Yeah.
So they do want that in the long term, but it's in the short term. I think, although they want it, they don't know the actual step to take. So a conversation that I was having earlier was a big part of what probably pushed me towards this area was in one of the papers that I had read, it said, my son could be a rocket scientist, but I'll still have to dress him and drive him to work every day. And to me it just makes perfect sense of what the difficulties within autism are. You know, it doesn't mean that they don't want to do what their aims are, and it's not that they don't have those skills to carry out that job, but it's what we would call the automatic things that we know that we have to do. That's where their issue is, and that's where time becomes an issue for somebody with autism.
Yeah. Well, is it just more pronounced with autism, and where actually it's the same but turns up as more subtle, or we can verbally express or give a reason or excuse as to why we're doing something? Am I not making any sense? You're looking at me like I'm not making any sense at all.
No.
Well,
Oh, that's
No.
good to know. Thank you. It's great to be part of the team.
well, I also study procrastination,
Ah,
and there we see similar things. People have intentions, people have plans, but once they need to execute those plans, that's where the problems start.
yeah.
They avoid the execution of those intentions.
Right.
So yeah, for a lot of people, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm wondering about people who are like drug addicts or people who have diabetes, that you organize your life around the shot.
Yeah.
That, you know, it's like every
So
2
I
hours,
was-
or drug addicts, you know, obviously their time gets collapsed more and more as you become more addicted. I didn't know if anybody studied with such populations.
Oh, I'm sure there must be. I'm not
Yeah,
aware.
we've
There
seen
must be
some on,
lots.
on how they have control and a sense of time
Yeah.
when they're addicted, and it becomes, yeah,
They are managing their time, but not in the way that we would do it.
not really using the clock.
Not,
No.
They're not using the clock. This is the
Yes,
interesting.
bodily people.
Yeah.
Maybe we should open to the
I know.
audience.
Definitely.
We can talk about other cultures, not so sticking to the clock that much. I'm saying it's very useful,
Yeah.
but it's not always the case that people use that as the organizing principle.
Yes. If you have not been to Bali, I recommend on your bucket list, go to Bali. In Bali, the word for time translates to rubber time, meaning time is stretched to fit human affairs, rather than in our is that rainy? Rather than in our sense of time, our human affairs fit into a time slot. And people there are just friendly and open and live for the moment. I've never been in a place where it's not hedonism. It's just literally enjoying the moment of friendships, of food, of sharing, it's sharing, caring, but not daring.
Well, let's just put
See,
this across.
I said 10.
Invite our audience who are also, experts in the field of time perspective. So I'm sure you've got lots to say. Can I just do one thing first, though? A quick poll. I always like doing straw polls. It's very simplistic, of course. But who thinks it is possible to manage time? Put your hands up. Okay, half. So does that mean the other half think it isn't? No, it doesn't mean that. Great.
Third option, yes and no.
Yeah, so I think that's more or less what's happening here.
Yeah.
There's consensus about yes and no, depending on context and situations. Right, so we've got different cultures. How do you do time?
Me?
Yeah.
Depends on context and circumstances and periods in my life. But I was better. I raised a question because it's common. We live in, especially Western societies.
Yeah.
If I were to call it North America and Europe, in particular, and many other countries in the world, in Europe too. In personal life, in relationships, in friendships, in families, like the one brief example I give, the mentor of my mentor is a very renowned neuroscientist, and I remember about 10 years ago I found out that his son committed inadvertently died from an overdose of drug,
Okay.
and that he felt very guilty because all the time he was investing in publishing in very high profile art journals and writing books. He later, in retrospection, felt that, wow, that's time he was not spending quality time with that son, and that son eventually developed addictions to drugs and died from that. And he began questioning, like how much worth is it to really have all that worldwide prestige if it's at the expense of such another extreme of not having been able to really do that kind of quality parenting enough to have his son still surrounding him. And that's one extreme example. But I prefer to give it because I see that often. I see the amount of the size of social network of people can depend on, and the quality of those relationships can depend on how the people can balance their times in between investing it on their professional or academic lives undivided with friends, colleagues, and families and like. And that's the question I wanted to ask.
Okay, there's a question there. Anybody want to say anything in response, or anybody here want to say anything in response?
Oh, I was just going to say, why didn't his wife tell him your son needs more of your time?
I can speak very. I am wondering the same question. I was really surprised when I found out about that the back end of that story.
Yeah.
I guess he was too consumed in so into the publisher parish academia world, and
But then he wasn't paying attention to her either.
Well, yeah, probably. I mean, we're guessing, aren't we? But yes, okay. I mean, I take the point, and it's this kind of, it's a type of neglect. And there's also, I think, what you said caused in me was, in my diary, in my schedule for 2026, I haven't got my children might kill themselves. It's not there. It's not planned. I haven't planned it. I haven't organised around that. Okay. So, we just don't do things like that. Frank?
There are a couple of assumptions, though, that in fact he could have taken time off and his son could have still killed himself. Mm-hmm. I mean, so that's one. Two, I think the point about cultures, the highest rates of suicide for competitiveness are in South Korea, Japan, and China. So I think we need to be careful about how we talk about competitiveness and stuff. I think the idea of how time matters actually is very much culturally determined, and I think one of the reasons it's become a big issue is because we are now so much of a global village in some sense. Yeah. There was a time when, if the people in France couldn't talk to the people in China, couldn't talk to the people in New York, everybody did their own thing and stuff, and their time schedules would have been exactly what they were. And even though everybody has clocks, I think somebody made the point that, you can make an arrangement, certainly in Trinidad where I'm from, or in Peru, where somebody's supposed to pick you up at 4, and if they come at 8 p.m. to pick you up for 4 p.m., they do not see that as out of time. It's very much a part of the context.
Yeah.
So I guess I was one of the ones who didn't put up my hand when I said it's possible to manage time, because I guess I agree with the perspective that what you're doing is that you're managing events, not necessarily time itself. And so that you're managing a number of things. And because to the extent that we're measuring time, time is finite, right, in terms of our measurement, right? And how many things, writing 60 books, which I will never do. But, I like to read too much novels, too many novels. But we're managing, we are deciding where we're going to put an emphasis. And that emphasis changes. So I may be writing an article that, it's important, and then my partner comes home and I say, well, you know what, that can wait, right? And there's somebody who makes a different choice, right? Who says, well, I need to get this because I'm up for tenure or whatever. So I think we're managing and I'm putting emphasis on different things and at different points in our careers, in our lives, in our developmental sequence and so on.
Okay.
But that also assumes we have autonomy over our time. Because a lot of the time we don't. We have requirements, whether it's your job or, I think, parenting. There's things that happen that change any plans you might have because those things have to take precedence. So it's, we sometimes have autonomy. And I think as researchers and academics, we often have more autonomy than other people in different types of jobs.
Yeah.
At least around the work hours, in how we spend them. Maybe not the requirements overall, but there's lots of parts of our life where we don't really have autonomy.
Any other,
Making time for parenting was your phrase. That's a new concept. Before it was mothering. Fathers did not take care of kids. It was not part of the job description when you got married. And for many academic women, I only know academic women, not even my wife, but others, for a long period of time, they taught, did research, wrote, whatever they did, and then they were in charge of taking care of the kids. And it's really, that's one of the biggest changes of, I don't know when, maybe around 2000, when we began to realize, no, this is something that should be shared, and that fathers should love to be a parent, and that their kids will benefit from that. So, but I think that's a relatively new concept. parenting always meant mama's job, not dad's job.
Well, you asked about self-awareness.
Yeah.
I think self-awareness can help you to make good choices
Right.
about where you want to spend your time.
It's almost like underneath time management is the opportunity for something far greater: consciousness, awareness, choices, and appreciating others, differences with different mental capacities, physical capacities, emotional capacity. I think obviously we're going to have to leave it there because I'm trying to do this paradoxical thing of managing time, which is weird. But look, thank you very much for joining in this new project, really, in where we can not just hear the individual speaker and the work that they're doing, but bring a group of people together and try and create a further conversation which could be shared with the public. That's the plan. I've got 2 more coming up. One tomorrow and one on Friday, so I hope you can come and join in on this, and let's see if we can find ways of improving it, because of course, like all good research, we're just looking for what it is we could do better.
What are the topics or the other?
The other topics require my memory, which isn't so good, but I know that the next one, he says, is around how can organisational time cultures be a good thing for employees. Something that I'm sure you have something to say there, Gwendolyn. And the last one is time a separate reality? And that's on Friday. Because maybe there's something else going on there with different levels of consciousness. But look, thank you very much for joining in.